Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are about midway through the 2042 season. Pirates are 46 and 41. That puts us 10 games behind the mighty Cardinals in the NL Central, but we are only a game and a half out of a wild card. So our goal is certainly to make the playoffs this season. We've been focused on that all off season. And even though we wouldn't be in the playoffs if the season were to end today, we're definitely going to try to compete to make up that last game and a half and hopefully get a wild card game. Hopefully, actually get into the number one wild card spot when all is said and done. I think it'll be pretty tough to overcome the 10-game deficit that we have behind St. Louis, but certainly would love to have a home playoff series if at all possible when all is said and done with this season. It's been a rougher season for us financially. We kept our ticket prices at $16, and you can see we sold about 3,000 less season tickets, and we've had about 2,100 fewer people per game attending overall. Attendance has been a little better more recently as the team's been playing better. Hopefully we can play better down the stretch. Right now the team is as healthy as it's been all year. No major leaguers on the injured list. Probably our last run with Ricky Gotti, who's been one of our top pitchers for several years. He's 6-6 with a 3.40 ERA right now. Looking for about $24 million a year for 6 years, given that we've already got Tony Santana signed to a relatively long-term contract, as well as our star outfielder Isaiah Hill. Very little chance that we'll be bringing Gotti back, given that we're competitive for the playoffs, unless things completely go off the rails over the next 4+ weeks. We'll be holding on to him, and hopefully with the case of Gotti, we'll get a nice compensatory pick for him at the end of this season if we're not able to extend him. And I think it's pretty unlikely that we're going to have the cash available to keep him on board, unfortunately. And here on the first day of July, it's also time to take a look at the international amateur free agents. A couple of real standouts. Jerry Ferreira just looks like an awesome player. Barely 16 years old. Looks like he can be a monster hitter. Great speed. Pretty solid defensive outfielder. Certainly jumps off the page. Jorge Gonzalez, a catcher, is also an interesting candidate. I generally would prefer a catcher with at least 55 ability and like to get into the 60s, but 50 ability, who is a guy who looks like he could probably slam if he fully develops 35, 40 homers a year while hitting decently. And he's also durable, so he's going to be behind the plate every day. Certainly an interesting prospect to potentially get to take a shot at. A couple others, third baseman Tony Lantigua. Decent prospect, not the greatest defensively, but looks like he could be a solid major league hitter if everything works out. He's also very young, just barely 16 years old. Center fielder Tony Santana is an older prospect. Good work ethic, pretty good speed, decent defender, and looks like he could be a decent hitter. And then Orlando Vargas, a second baseman, another durable player, older, over 18 years old. Also looks like he could be a solid hitter. Not the greatest fielder in the world. You know, you can get away at second with that weak arm. Clearly, to me, Ferreira jumps off the page, and Gonzalez is in the mix simply because he's a catcher. The pitchers are both guys, if we fail on our first one or two guys in a Bill Alvarado or a Ruben Sauceda is still around, maybe make a bid on either of them, but certainly not the first person that we would chase. So the question is whether we go after another outfielder. We're just stocked with outfielders, but clearly Jerry Ferreira looks like a special player. Or go with more of a position where we haven't invested as much in recent years. catcher. Again, I'd love to have a better defensive catcher in terms of his catcher ability than it looks like Jorge Gonzalez will be. But really like the work ethic, really like the bat. Can't really play him anywhere else. I mean, he's 6'1", so you could play him at first. You could turn him into a left fielder if you needed to, but he's not special with his bat at first base or left field. Interesting prospect, just not exciting enough defensively for me to do anything except at least take a shot at Jerry Ferrera. Don't think we'll get him. We've had pretty good luck getting our first or second choices among international amateur free agents thus far in this playthrough. He's looking for everything. The full $5 million. We'll make an offer to him. We'll find out hopefully in the next couple of days whether we get Slappy Ferrera onto our team or not. And we've also found a somewhat interesting trade to consider. Zion Rose, the catcher, on the trade block from the Rockies. Decent hitter for a catcher, but hitting only .201 this year. Respectable defensively, great arm. Player's had a nice career, two-time All-Star. Wild card MVP back in 2034. You know, one of the few players still in the game that is a name that we know from 2022 here in 2042. Can get him for not too much, and as a right-handed bat, I think he would fit pretty well with John Herrera, who's a left-handed hitter. Right now we have two left-handed hitting catchers. Giovanni Venturini, I think, could be part of the team next year, but he does still have an option year left, so we can send him down to AAA. His defensive ability is a little better, not quite as good an arm, but I do kind of like the idea of having a right-handed catcher to pair up with Herrera instead of Herrera just being the everyday starter. Play Herrera primarily against righties, and then the righty Zion Rose, play him primarily against lefties. So if I can piece something together that's not egregious in terms of what they're looking for him, particularly if we can get them to hang on to a decent chunk of his salary, I think we'll go ahead and do it. He's also extremely popular, so he will put a couple more fannies in the seats, as they say, which for a team like the Pirates, trying to get every dollar of ticket revenue that we can isn't the worst thing in the world. Now, they'll probably have a big hit for us in the off season when he does leave, but at this point, I got to worry about the here and now, and if we get a player who helps give us a better chance of winning this year and also helps us sell a few more tickets this season, if that's going to leave us with a hole to fill next year when he leaves, it is what it is. We'll deal with it then. And we do have a deal for Alston. We are going to trade the AAA catcher, Sergio Chavis, who we picked up in a trade with the Yankees actually exactly a year ago today. Like his defensive ability, just don't think he's going to be enough of a hitter to be a long-term part of our plans. We also have to trade right fielder Mel Quiros, great personality, but not really much of a prospect. And then throw in Kyle Alston, who's kind of a 4A pitcher for us. Been with us at Indianapolis the last few seasons. Picked him up in a trade with Baltimore. Good personality, but looks to be kind of a replacement level major league player. He's almost 31 years old, and he's spent 72 days on major league rosters at this point. So none of those guys are huge losses. And I think that, as I said, Zion Rose will come on. We're going to be responsible for 40% of his contract, so it will cut into our money a little bit. But I think he'll be a nice addition for us. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. The fans happy that we brought Zion Rose on board, which is good. Gives us a tiny little bump in fan interest, but better than nothing. And now we need to update the roster. Thank you, Mr. Venturini, but you are going to Indianapolis. And we will put Zion Rose onto the roster, and then we're going to find out what happened with the international amateur free agents over the next couple of days, and then we're also getting ready for the first-year draft for actual rookies, that are international amateur free agents in about less than 2 weeks. Not surprising news that Jerry Ferreira prefers a different offer than ours. Looks like he may end up in Texas, but I'm sure others will continue to try to bring him on board. So at least we found out. We'll take a shot at Gonzalez now. Says he's looking for 4.6. We'll offer him the full $5 million. Try to give ourselves a fighting chance. If things fall through with Gonzalez, I guess the hope is maybe one of those pitchers is still around, but this could also end up being one of the years where we just decide not to spend the $5 million if we miss out on our first couple of choices of international amateur free agents. And we did get Jorge Gonzalez signed. A little bit of a surprise. We got our second choice. Ferreira did end up signing with Texas. Not quite 17 years old, probably going to be a couple of years till we bring him up to our DSL team. But again, I'd prefer catcher with better defensive ability, but it doesn't seem like catcher ability is quite the same hack in OOTP 23 as it has been in a couple of the previous versions. So his bat is so good that he could be behind the plate as our backstop, 6, 7, 8 years from now if we haven't been fired by Mr. Nutting by that time for not making enough money for him. And let's find out if we've got any All-Stars this year. If we have a starter, I would think our only shot is probably Isaiah Hill. Tony Cota, with the great defense, was second in the voting at shortstop. And yes, not surprisingly, Isaiah Hill actually barely won, but he will be in the All-Star game. Looks like he's the only one who's guaranteed to be an All-Star. Let's find out how many All-Stars the Pirates have with this 50-43 record. Wow, no starting pitchers. That's a bit of a snub to the strong Pirates rotation. Manny Collazo, who we picked up in a trade with Baltimore, All-Star for us, first-time All-Star for Collazo. I'm really happy to have the soon-to-be 25-year-old on the team. 2-3 record, 21 saves, 54 strikeouts, and 40 innings pitched as our closer. Looks like he is the only pitcher that we have on the team. And Isaiah Hill, who's the starter in left field, is the only position player. So only 2 All-Stars for the Pirates this year. Our starting rotation has been pretty solid, taking a look at the statistics for the team. 3rd in the league in ERA. We're 4th overall in runs allowed, 11th in runs scored. So clearly would like to help the offense. But, the won-lost records of a lot of our starters aren't great. But you would think that a guy like Tony Santana, 7 wins, 3.26 ERA, could potentially have been in the mix. But was not to be this year for the Pirates to have an all-star starter. But we will get to see Collazo, and of course Mr. Hill makes it 4 all-star appearances in 4 major league seasons. And the player draft is going to happen today, but we also got just a couple days ago a trade proposal from the Nationals. 26-year-old first baseman Jaquan Hinton, who's a pretty good hitter. He's making $6 million this year, going to be making close to $8 next year. So sadly, for the Pirates, it could end up just being a rental. But right now, they're looking for Jaden Dixon in return, who's a utility infielder for us. I like his glove, I like his personality, and he doesn't have a horrible bat for a utility infielder. I'd prefer not to give him up, but it doesn't seem like they're looking for a crazy amount for Hinton. And with the way that our first basemen have hit this year, he could be a really interesting bat to add to maybe give our offense a little bit of a spark. You know, you look over the course of his career, he's put up a 141 OPS plus, 139 WRC plus. He's having a down season this year, but he's pretty consistently over the course of his entire career been a well above average offensive player with some home run power. I'm going to see if maybe we can put something together for him, because I do think that bat would be an upgrade for us at first base. All right, I think I pieced together a deal that we're going to go for. We're giving up a lot for a guy that is most likely a 2.5 month rental, but I do think that that bat can really help us, and yes, he is popular. Definitely a guy who could hit some dingers for us. And we don't have to give up the utility infielder Jaden Dixon, who I just really like that glove for a backup infielder. Good personality, and he can hit a little bit. He's durable. So instead, we're going to give up Jose Cuevas from the Major League roster. Right-handed hitter whose batting profile looks decent. He's versatile defensively, but he's not particularly good anywhere. Would certainly give him up straight for Hinton, but we had to add in a couple other players. Omar Gines was our international free agent signing in 2038, the first year of this playthrough. He's almost 21 years old. Doesn't look like he's going to be a big-time hitter. Just really hasn't developed. We did move him from rookie ball to single A ball not that long ago, hitting a $190 in single A. Not a big-time prospect. And then Javon Spells is a catcher that we had to throw in to get them to keep more of his contract. Average defensively. Certainly seems like someone who could be a backup catcher at the major league level, but he's 22 years old, hitting 239 in A ball. Not going to let a 9th round pick, who's probably a backup catcher and not a great defensive backup catcher in a best case scenario, keep us from adding a bat that can really potentially make a difference for us down the stretch. So we are going to go ahead and bring Jaquan Hinton onto the team. Hooray, hooray. The fans are excited to have Hinton on board. Gives us, actually, I don't know if that was much of a bump or not. We probably lost something along the way, but we're trying to keep fan interest up to the best extent that we can. I think the addition of Hinton will definitely help us offensively, and hopefully having Zion Rose in against left-handers at catcher will help us offensively as well. The addition of Hinton probably means fewer at-bats for both Sean Barley and Luis Flores, but those are the breaks. I think Hinton's clearly a better player, and Hinton's going to go right into the DH slot, actually, and be our DH against righties batting cleanup, DH against lefties batting third for us. Flores still playing, and we'll actually keep, if Flores and Barley are still both playing, we'll put Barley back in against left-handers. We'll see what the team looks like. It looks like Zion Rose is actually the one that manager wants to start against both righties and lefties. I'm going to overrule him on that and keep Herrera in as our starter against right-handed pitching for the time being. So it looks like Alfredo Velasquez actually is the guy who's losing at-bats, because we brought Jaquan Hinton on board. Velasquez is having a nice year for us, only hitting 227, but his 21 homers and 300 at-bats. He's not really any better against left-handed batters than he is against right-handed batters, or I would think about starting him at DH against lefties. Looking at Hinton's definitely less successful against left-handed pitchers. I think I am going to put Velasquez back in as our DH against lefties. Gives us the opportunity to use Jaquan Hinton as a pinch hitter in those games, which probably isn't the worst thing in the world. So we'll see if this slightly revamped lineup can start winning some games for us over the last 20 days of July. But before getting to that, we've got to get to the first-year player draft, where the Pirates are going to be picking number 25. So last season, we had a lot of luck, and we were either picking 13th or 15th, and we had a brilliant young pitcher, Alex Arroyo. Yeah, we were picking 13th. He dropped to us in the 13th pick in the draft, and you can see right now he's viewed as the number 11 prospect in all of baseball. Certainly would love if a scenario like that develops this year, where a big-time player drops to us at number 25, but certainly not counting on it. We'll see who's available. A few batters out there that look interesting. So a quick look at some of the top batting prospects. Center fielder Tyrese Adams. It's like a pretty good prospect. Looks like he can be an above-average major league hitter. Pretty solid defensively. Has good speed. Decent base runner. Good level of competition. We always seem to end up going with a center fielder in the first round with this team, but if we can find a better player than Adams, that would be awesome. But number 25 in the draft, I certainly wouldn't feel bad taking a player like Adams. Catcher Alex Ortiz, not the best bat in the world, but for a catcher, it's acceptable. A little above average in his defensive ability, a little below average in his arm. Not a bad prospect, though. He'd certainly be in the mix. Center fielder Brandon Redmond, looks like a college player, age 22, coming out of Stanford. He's fast. Definitely a guy who could steal some bases. Pretty decent contact, potentially pretty decent home run power. Off the charts gap power, which in connection with that speed, it's going to lead to tons of triples and doubles. Yeah, you can see it in his stats this year in college. 13 doubles, 12 triples, and 11 home runs. Really nice defensive player. He's durable. Very easy to sign as a college player. If his contact was a little higher or his eye was a little better and he was going to be getting on base constantly with that speed, he would be a devastating player offensively. Outfield isn't a huge need for us, but he's definitely an interesting prospect. And then Jerry Rivera, shortstop. Not incredible defensively, really probably more of a third baseman. Can play him at second, obviously, too. Pretty interesting bat, a little bit of speed. I kind of like all of these players a little bit. There's something, I can make a case for all four of these guys. Taking a look at the top pitchers that are out there. This guy, I'm going to like his personality. He's looking for $10 million. Is he a starter who doesn't really have 3 pitches? Potentially. 18-year-old, looks like he's just going to have nasty stuff. Already almost has a major league fastball and not that far from a major league splitter. The changeup doesn't develop, though. It's going to be tough for him to be a starter. Love the personality, though. Good enough stamina. There is just a chance that he ends up being a awesome reliever. if he can't get that changeup developed. Nasim Bin Ahmed, another starting pitcher prospect. Potential 4-pitch arsenal if his changeup develops. Certainly looks like he could be a decent pitcher at the major league level. Hector Granados, 21-year-old out of Stanford. Couple big prospects out of Stanford this year. Durable, horrible at holding runners on, but certainly looks like he could be a marginal major league pitcher already at this point. Certainly someone who could help the pitching staff probably by the end of next season. So he's an interesting prospect. Max Rodriguez, 17-year-old. Like the personality, like the durability. Potentially has a real interesting profile. Potentially has a 4-pitch arsenal, although outside of his cutter, the pitchers look like they'll be mediocre to a little bit above average at best, but still could be a pretty effective starter. David Smith, 18-year-old. Again, going to be reliant on that changeup developing to really become a starter. And then Ryan Wooten, another guy who's going to be reliant on developing that changeup. But for the 25th pick in the draft, it seems like it's a relatively deep draft. There's some interesting prospects out there. Let's see who Cavanario says we should pick. Jerry Rivera, the shortstop. He's an interesting player. Again, he's not a shortstop. I mean, he can play shortstop, but you'd want someone with another 10 points of range and another 10 points of error in a perfect world to be your major league shortstop. But he could certainly play third at a major league level and be a pretty good hitter. You could play him at second. Can play him in right or left. 6'2", you could play him at first base. He's a pretty versatile defensive player who's also got some potential offensive skill. Do like the high work ethic. Not the smartest guy, and he's a 19-year-old high school senior. So not a perfect prospect, but there are no perfect prospects in this draft. But for the 25th pick, there are definitely some interesting prospects. I've got a tough decision ahead of me to figure out which direction to go. I was very intrigued by Brandon Redmond. That speed is just unlike almost any player I've ever had in OOTP, so I think it would be really interesting to have a player who can just steal bases at will, take the extra base at will, and with that gap power just be slamming doubles and triples all over the field. And I really like the glove. He's going to be major league ready probably in less than a year. So he's kind of a plug and play guy. We just don't really need another outfielder. And as much as I hate to give credit to our scout, although Jerry Rivera is not a shortstop, he can play just about any other position in the infield, and he could play shortstop if we need him to. And the bat isn't special, but it's close to special if it develops fully. Given the work ethic, that makes you think he can develop fully. The lack of intelligence scares you a little bit. We've got good coaching, though, in the minors, but that's potentially an interesting bat. Could definitely be a very good defensive third baseman. Could also play second, could also play short, could also play first, could also play left or right. It's unlike me to take a player who's not that smart, particularly in the first round. But I'm intrigued enough by Rivera that I am going to go ahead and bring him on board here in the first round. See who's available in the second round. Guessing that some of the pitchers still will be, but some of the pitchers are looking for crazy money. We did go under slot with the guy that we got, but we still don't have anywhere near enough money set away to pick up any of those pitchers, unfortunately. But we'll see if anyone interesting slides to us in the second round. And clearly the top batting prospects are gone. Looking at the pitching prospects, actually most of the guys that we looked at are gone because they were all 4-star guys, but there are a bunch of 3.5-star potential pitchers out there. Cortez Arroyo, reliever out of college, probably not a second-round pick for us. Min-Soo Kim, like the work ethic, don't love the rest of the personality. Meh stuff, meh control, great movement, but not that exciting. Omar Lino. Now, this is a guy for the second round that you might take a flyer on, although his bonus demand is high, unfortunately. But high work ethic and intelligence. Looks like you could potentially have a 4-pitch arsenal, ultimately have plus stuff, plus movement and average control. I just don't know that we want to be spending $6.5 million on him. Angelo Murph, another high school pitcher. If it wasn't for the poor work ethic, he would be a real interesting guy with a potential 5-pitch arsenal, including a cutter, knuckle curve. Bonus demand is above slot, but not egregious. Bobby Rennie, probably a reliever, unless that changeup develops. Jaden Stamper, almost certainly a reliever. And also looking for a lot of money. Who does Mr. Cavanario think we should go with? Ruben Gresham, second baseman, high schooler. That personality is a turnoff for me. He's also not that good defensively. Not a bad bat for a second-round pick, but just not the type of player I'm likely to go for. And we're going to go with Omar Pampa in the second round, third baseman. Actually, is it Pampa we're going to go with? Hold, please. I saw a guy named Omar, and I went to him, but it's actually Omar Clater that we're going to go with. He's a little older. He's listed as a shortstop, but he's really a third baseman. Could play third, could play a poor second or shortstop, could be a corner outfielder, could be a decent right fielder with that arm, could play first. Not a bad bat, though. He's got a little speed, got a good personality. Feel like we're a little light in terms of our infielders. Obviously, we just went with one in the first round. We're going to go ahead and pick Clater here in the second round. A lot of decent prospects still out there at this point. No one particularly exciting, but we're going to draft Clater, see who's around in the third round. I'll tell you right now that there's a pitcher with the last name of Renteria who we would be very intrigued by in round 3 if he's still around. Let's take a look and see if he is still around. Franklin Renteria is still around. I think that is our third round choice. Decent personality, has enough stamina to start, has a potential 6-pitch repertoire, which we're always a little bit of a sucker for. Looks like he could have plus stuff, really good movement, and acceptable control if he completely develops. For a third-round pick, I think he's a pretty interesting guy to bring on board. So we are going to go ahead and I guess we'll see what our scouting director recommends. He recommends another starter, Bobby Rennie. We looked at him last round. I just worry about that changeup. If that changeup doesn't develop, he's probably a reliever, almost certainly a reliever. Nasty stuff, not the best movement in the world. Personally, I like Renteria better. So we're going to go with Renteria here in round number 3. move on to round 4. Scouting director recommends Omarion Woods, a high school shortstop. Okay defensively. Looks like if everything develops, he's kind of a average-ish major league bat. Probably not the worst guy in the world for the 4th round, but certainly going to look and see if we can find somebody better than him. And the pickings are getting slim here in the 4th round. We're going to do something a little weird. We're going to pick a pitcher that we're going to turn into a position player. Jerry Drake, not all that exciting as a pitching prospect, but he looks like he can be a really crazy contact hitter, good gap power, pretty decent speed, so could definitely knock a lot of extra base hits. Not going to strike out, good bunter. Not a lot of power and not going to generate a ton of walks, so not a perfect prospect. Pretty versatile, could play a lot of different positions. Certainly third, certainly first. You know, you could play him a second or short. You wouldn't like it. Can play anywhere in the outfield. Like him a little better than Ricky Caldera, but if Ricky Caldera is around in the 5th round, we're going to take him and try to do the same thing, turn him into a position player. And Ricky Caldera is still around in the 5th, so he's going to be our selection in the 5th, another guy that we're going to convert to a everyday player. He's pretty versatile defensively also, doesn't have as brilliant contact and gap power, but a lot more balanced with a little more power, still really good at avoiding strikeouts, doesn't have the same kind of speed, not as good a bunter, but for a 5th round pick is a guy who might become a useful bat in the major leagues. We're going to pick Caldera also. Probably nothing else too interesting going on in the draft, but if I think there is, I'll let you know about it. Otherwise, you'll be seeing me on the other side. Now that we're past the draft and we actually have all except one of our draftees signed, just waiting on our 6th rounder, starting pitcher J.J. Terrell. Definitely turns to the point where our attention needs to be focused on the pennant race and what we can possibly do to ensure that this team gets in the playoffs. Although we're 9.5 behind the Cardinals in the Central, we are tied for the 2nd and 3rd wild card spot with the Marlins, 4.5 behind the Braves. We are up 2.5 on the Rockies and the Padres for that wild card spot, so we've definitely improved our position over the first 21 days of July, which is positive. And I don't know if it's positive or not, but our 2 new additions really haven't helped at all. Zion Rose is hitting $150 in 20 at-bats, no home runs, no runs driven in. And Jaquan Hinton hitting 200 in 20 at-bats with 1 run batted in. So neither of those guys has done much yet. Obviously, a very small sample size for both of them, but we'll see how the next week goes and then decide if we want to and if we need to add some talent through the trade market. Luis Flores, waiting to hear about a potential injury to our Rule 5 acquisition there. He's held his own after jumping up from AA into the majors, 268 batting average, pretty close to a league average OPS plus and WRC plus, although he has been a slightly negative WAR player. Not great defensively, but a good personality, interesting batting profile, some speed. Won't be the worst thing in the world if he's banged up for a while. It'll probably allow us to bring up somebody to the major league team who's really more of a major league player at this point, and we certainly have lots of prospects down in AAA. Big question is when we're going to pull the trigger on bringing Henry Gonzalez up to only hitting 254 in only 6 home runs. You look at his contact, his gap power, his eye, and his avoiding Ks, and they all look like they're major league ready. And I mean, even his home run power isn't horrible, although it hasn't really developed yet this year, but he's still only hitting 254 down in AAA. So as much as, looking at his ratings makes me think he could help us, his performance down in AAA makes me not so confident that he would be the guy we should bring up immediately if we do have an injury need for somebody. And Flores is going to be out with a hamstring strain for 5 to 6 weeks, so that's certainly going to open up a major league roster spot for us. We'll put him on the 10-day IL. And now we've got a decision to make. Who is going to be coming back up? We also got a trade proposal from the Reds. Don't know that I want to do a trade with a bunch of random minor leaguers. Yeah, looks like you're kind of offering us guys that aren't that exciting. And we're going to bring up a blast from the past. You made me remember Rich Alvarado from our Kansas City days. He was kind of a perennial utility infielder for us. 33 years old now. Hitting .304 in very limited action down in AAA. I don't think he's going to get a ton of playing time. Now I'm kind of rethinking bringing Alvarado up. I think I'm going to go with David Hogg instead, another veteran, 37 years old. He's wrecked, but he also has a good personality and is a little more versatile defensively. Don't think either of these guys are going to be a big difference maker for us, but want to still make the right decision on who to bring up. Another week in the books. We're still 9.5 back. Taking a look at the schedule. Took 2 out of 3 against St. Louis, which was big, but then we lost 2 out of 3 to Miami, one of the teams that we're battling with for the wild card spot. So we've got the Mets in Milwaukee to finish off the month before we get to the trade deadline. Taking a look at the standings, still 9.5 in the division, and we're now the final wild card spot, only up 2 on the Giants, 2.5 on the Rockies. Braves definitely starting to pull away from us a little bit as far as potentially having a home game. At this point, the big goal is to just ensure that we get into the playoffs. Taking a look at the team statistics, we're falling back to 12th in runs scored, 3rd in runs allowed. Similar to last season, I feel like if we can get into the top 10 in runs scored with our pitching, that'll mean that we're in the playoffs. But that means we've got to kind of improve another couple spots to feel real good about where we are. Team definitely has bounced back after that poor April, winning records in May, June, and now most likely July. But if there's a bat available that can help us, now might be the time for us to try to find it. Well, we need help with our offense, and it looks like Arturo Ailman is the best bat out there, 29-year-old with the Nationals, making a ton of money. We'd have to get them to retain a big chunk of it to be able to possibly make it work, but has been an above-average offensive player over the course of his career, despite having a down year this year, which is kind of a similar theme to the first baseman we just traded with from the Nats, who's not doing all that exceptionally for us, Mr. Jaquan Hinton, who's still batting .200, but he does have a home run for us at this point. Given that we know we're going to be without Flores for a while, we could let Hogg go. He's only had 1 at-bat in the limited time since we brought him up. We really don't need another outfielder, but we do need a bat. So if Ailman's available for a decent price, and I think he probably would be because he's headed to free agency after this year, and the Nationals are selling. Where are they in the standings this year? They were a playoff team last year. Oof. Last place this year, though, in the NL. I guess tied in the NL East for last place with the Phillies. So they're just trying to save a little bit of money, get something in return. We'll see if we can set up a deal where they keep most of his contract and we don't have to give him all that much for him. And they'll take just about anything for him. I don't even know if I'd call Willie Carrasco a prospect, but certainly happy to ship him off to Washington to get Ailman on board. Hope Ailman isn't. I mean, I guess he could be a DH for us. He's not going to be playing every day in the outfield, I don't think. We're going to send Hogg down to AAA. We may have to DFA him to get him there. Yeah, out of option years. So I wonder if we can get anything for Hogg in a trade. I would doubt it, but not in our long-term plans, obviously. But I don't really think anyone's going to pick him up if we waive and DFA him also. It's more just if there's anyone willing to give us something interesting for him. Looks like a bunch of mediocre relievers making $2 or $3 million a year. Not that exciting. Didn't really expect that we would get a prospect, but you never know unless you try. Edgar Flores does have 2 minor league options left. He's our old guy. Of course I recognize him. His control is still not great. He is a fan favorite, so the fans would be probably a little excited if we brought him back. He's been so brutal. He just walks so many batters. If we can get them to keep a big chunk of his contract and we'll just dump him in AAA, I guess that's something. Yeah, we'll take just about anything to keep his whole contract. All right, fine. We'll send you Luis Estrada also. They'll keep Flores' contract. Our money improves by getting Hogg off the books. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade as well. Moving Hogg off of the books opened up the roster spot that we needed for Mr. Ailman to go on to the majors. Edgar Flores, we have to add him to the secondary roster, but he is going right into AAA and he refuses to be demoted. Oh, I hate you, Edgar Flores. Oh, God. Can we get anything for this clown? We probably can, since 100% of his contract is taken care of at this point. Don't want to bring on another problem. Oh, a guy on a minor league contract. David Feliz. Not a bad fielder, got some speed, never going to hit enough to be a major leaguer. He's got 3 option years left. Your second tenure with the Pirates was very short, Mr. Flores. Godspeed to you. We will welcome Mr. Feliz onto our team. And it looks like Ailman is going to be our DH. You can see between Ailman and Hinton, the 2 guys that we've traded for from the Nationals that a very mediocre team was looking to get rid of are now batting 4th and 5th in our lineup. Hopefully those guys will start to hit over the final weeks of this season. We could definitely use a little bit more offense. It's probably about it for us. Wasn't really impressed with any of the other hitters out there. Our pitching staff I'm kind of fine with, and we still do have the potential arrival of our big trade acquisition at the beginning of this year, Jose Montoya at the major league level. 4.08 ERA in AAA, but he is kind of working on his development down there. Don't see any huge need to bring him up yet. I mean, he's allowed 133 hits, given up 47 walks, so a 148 whip in those 121 and a third innings. He is the number 53 prospect in baseball, but kind of similar to Mr. Gonzalez. He's not embarrassing himself down there, but he's also not distinguishing himself so much that I feel like we need to bring him up right away. So we'll see how these next couple days go, but I think we've kind of done what we're going to do this trade deadline. And we made it to the trade deadline. The Pirates are playing a little better lately. You can see we've strung 3 wins in a row together, which actually puts us into the second wild card spot, half a game ahead of the Marlins, because the Braves or the Mets, one of them will end up winning the division. But we're still 5 games behind those teams for the potential to be hosting a wild card series. Would be kind of interesting if after all is said and done, we end up having another wild card series with the Mets this year. If we do, hopefully it'll be a little more successful than last year when they beat us 2-0 when they got the home field advantage on us through the coin flip. Still only up 2.5 games on the Rockies and the Giants, and now the Padres. Wow, for that third and final wild card spot. Those teams are also in a big battle for the division, so hopefully they'll all be beating each other up a bit over these last 2 months of the season, and they won't be providing as much competition to us for the wild card spot. Still, obviously, a very big long shot for us to get past the Cardinals, but hey, we've made up 3 games in the last 3 days on them to be 7 back rather than 10 back. I guess that's a little bit of progress. And we'll take a look at the expanded standings, see whether we've been lucky or not. We actually are 2 games better than we should be with that plus 32 run differential, so that makes me a little more cautious on things. But I just don't feel like there's a ton out there that is really compelling in terms of who's available on the trade block. Obviously, we could try to pick up someone who's not on the trade block, but we don't have a ton of money at this point to bring on talent to the team. I think we're kind of at a position where we're gonna run with who we've got. If we have any injuries, we do have guys like Henry Gonzalez, Flavio Avanzi, Rich Alvarado, Giovanni Venturini, and a whole host of experienced major league pitchers, in addition to Montoya, waiting down in AAA to potentially help us. So I think we're done with our moves. If the season were to be over today, we'd be a playoff team. We have brought on a catcher, a first baseman, and an outfielder over this past month to help the offense. Guessing we're not going to really see any results in our team statistics yet. Yeah, we're still 12th in runs scored, and we've actually slipped back to 4th in runs allowed. But if we can remain in the top 5 in runs allowed and get into the top 10 in runs scored, pretty confident that we'll be a playoff team. Had 3 straight winning months. I don't think there's anything else to do except play this last game of the month of July against Milwaukee and see what the stats look like, or the standings look like, as the calendar turns to August. Hopefully we finish July 16-9 rather than 15-10. Have a feeling in this battle for the playoffs, every win is going to matter to this Pittsburgh Pirates team. And unfortunately, we did lose that last day of July. Some more awards for our minor leaguers, including Alex Ruacho. I think he's about ready to go up to AAA. Only 21 years old, but 287 batting average, 25 doubles and 11 home runs and 383 at-bats in AA this year. a year from now, he could be pushing to be a September call-up. He's certainly behind at this point in his career where Gonzalez is, but Gonzalez is a year and a half older and was drafted a year earlier, so he should kind of be ahead of him at this point. So 61 and 51 as the month of August begins. 8 games behind the Cardinals, and we are, after that loss in Miami, won a game. We're now in the 3rd wild card spot, only 2 games up on the Giants and the Padres. So if the season were to end today, we're in the playoffs, but we still have got almost 2 months of action ahead of us, and we'll find out how the Pirates do in that push for the playoffs in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.